And hello, everybody. I think we are live. Let me just check. Yep, I think that's all set. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining me here today. This will be the first of several live streams I plan on doing. And today we're going to be talking about how to kick the wind down habit in 5 simple steps. Right. So this is going to be a new approach to many of you. It's simple. That's the key thing with this. It's absolutely simple. It's not some magically difficult thing we have to learn. And I really want to reassure you at first that this doesn't have anything to do with willpower. So it's nothing to do with willpower. This has nothing to do with, counting days. I see so many times people talk about 1 day sober, 5 days sober, 10 days sober. In fact, this has nothing even to be with being sober if that's not part of your goal, right? This is all about a different approach. And the really cool thing is that once you get used to doing this, you can actually use this approach anywhere. You can run through these steps anywhere, even if you're out and about with other people. Now, before I get into this, just a few words about me. Anna Charles, I'm a life coach, and I help people stop over drinking in 90 days without missing out on life. Now, there's a couple of, 3 important points there. Really, first is that it's about stopping over drinking, right? For me, so it's not about being sober. This is not about having to be really perfect in that. For some people, they just want to learn how to drink less. Others just want to drink less in one sitting. So whatever the goal is, this is about achieving freedom around alcohol. We do this without missing out on life. It has to be fun, right? Life is for living. I think the thing that kept me drinking for longer than really would have been necessary in hindsight was that I thought it was going to be dreary and drudgery and be the one sitting in the corner. No one wants to be the one sitting in the corner nursing the orange juice, fielding all the questions, why aren't you drinking, right? So it's fun. So this is it's still a way of having a good time. And thirdly, it's in 90 days, right? And in that time, I say that we will achieve permanent change for your life. So you'll be able to stop worrying about your drinking and move on. Now, I was previously, in a previous life, I had a high-flying career. I was in a large tech company, great job. But then I found life coaching. And that was, to me, it was a bit amazing because I was able to use a lot of the life coaching techniques and make real change in my life for the better. One of those areas being drinking. I used to just drink a little bit too much. I was never an alcoholic. It was never a huge problem. I was highly functioning. It was just really annoying and really frustrating that I couldn't stop. I found it difficult. I found I didn't have an off switch. But with working with a coach, fixed all that, and it sort of changed me. And I thought, right, I feel like I now deal in miracles by helping others, because it still feels like a miracle to me that I was able to basically unknit that habit. Before we get into the steps, I get asked often, will this work for me? People say. Now, what I will say is that I don't work with alcoholics. So if you are an alcoholic and you are drinking to stop withdrawal, I would recommend that you don't stop drinking without seeking medical assistance. Yes, work with a doctor for that. But other than that, we seem to be taught in society there are 2 types of drinker. There are the alcoholics, and then there's everybody else who drinks normally. And if you struggle anywhere between that spectrum, we're tough, really. There really isn't a way to get help. And those are the people that I address, right? Where you're frustrated and annoyed with the drinking, you want to do something about it. And it's nothing to do, I would say, with your personality. It's just something people are worried about. It's nothing to do with your personality. It's nothing necessarily to do with your background, your family history, what's expected of you at work, any of those external circumstances. What I have to cover today is all about your thoughts. So before we get into the first step, I actually want to add kind of like, it's not really a step, but just a little heads up, I guess you could say. I really want you to expect this to be hard, right? So what we're doing here is you are learning a new skill. So it's going to be hard, not just because you're not capable, it's because you're a new skill. And every time we learn a new skill, whether it's learning to drive a car, bake a cake, write a report, do an accountancy exam, it's going to be difficult to start with. So you're learning a new skill. You're going to have to practice this. And I think it makes it so much easier if we go in expecting that, right? So you're not going to be surprised. So step 1 I've actually, by the way, using a mnemonic on this, Odessa. I love Frederick Forsyth, the Odessa file. So this is Odessa with only one S. So my high tech here, oops, there we go. First step is I want you to become the observer, right? So the O is the key piece there. I want you to, when you are learning to wind down or calm down without drinking, right, there's going to come a point when you have to say no. And it's how we manage ourselves around the no. And I want you to become really good at observing yourself in that situation, because so often we drink and we drink automatically. We have 1, 2, 3 drinks on our hand before we frankly even realize what we're doing. So I want you to be on to yourself. I want you to become your own observer. And that can see itself in many guises. It can be when you go to the fridge yourself, you come home from work, go to the fridge, pour yourself a drink, or you go to the cupboard, pour yourself a drink. You know, what's going on, observe what's happening there. And if you then say no to yourself, you know, that's a point of observation. It could be when you go out with friends, you go to a bar and they say what you have, and you're having a wine. And at that point you say no, right? Observe, that's another observable point, right, to focus in on. It can also be a lot more subtle. I had somebody tell me the other day that she'd actually maneuvered her way through. She was okay. She wasn't saying, she'd said no already to a drink. And then her friend then came along actually with a drink. So she kind of gone against her and she bought her a drink anyway. So she felt she had to run the gauntlet again. Of course, then it's almost even worse because there's a drink sitting there in front of her and she's having to say no to that all over again. And then all those feelings of guilt and not drinking it and feeling that she was ungrateful and so on. But you know, notice this, how this is feeling, start to focus in on it. And the reason for that is that when we focus on something and we start to do something about it, many of you will no doubt have heard, you know, there's a theory out there, there's an example that says go to a car park and how many red cars are there, right? Well, your brain will then finely tune itself to that and will note down all the red cars. It won't see any of the green, blue, black, white, silver, any of the other ones. And it's a similar thing going on here, right? We're trying to tune out what's happening. We're trying to focus in, zero in on what's happening at the point when we want to drink and the point when we are saying no, or even in the early days when we're trying to say no, we're getting used to the skill. Second step, so this is a D. I want you to describe the feeling in your body, and that is exactly how it sounds. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you how to do it, and then I'm going to give you a couple of excellent reasons why this is an important step. So when you're at that point, you're saying no, and you're going to feel something in your body, and I want you to really figure out what that is. And I want you to do it in a very scientific way, right? So for me, I used to find that I would get tension in my shoulders. In fact, specifically my left shoulder, it would sit at the back of my shoulder, be like a hard nub of energy there, and it would then push its way down through my shoulder blade into my back, and that was like a dull ache. That was what would happen for me when I was feeling tense. Another, I used to frown a little bit. Some people I know grind their teeth. So whatever it is for you, figure that out. And please be scientific. In fact, pretend that you're going to the doctor, right? So when you go to the doctor, you sit in the surgery and the doctor says, so well, tell me what's wrong. You then sit and say, well, I don't feel very well. And he'll say, well, or she will say, describe that to me. And you'll talk about, well, my stomach, and tell me about the pain in your stomach. Oh, it's a dull ache and it's large. And where does it come from? How often? At what time of day? You know, you'll be giving all this very factual, very descriptive information. Whereas when we talk about how we feel when we're drinking, we're saying no. We often say, "Well, it's terrible, absolutely terrible. It's agony. This is really killing me. This is really, really difficult." You don't go into the doctor and say, "Oh, this is really agony. It's really killing me." You actually will sit there and explain that, and that's what I want you to do. Any parents out there, you'll be familiar with this with your children. If they say they don't feel very well, right, you will ask them to tell me the symptoms. Describe it to me so we can try and figure out what's going on. So this is all part and parcel of being the observer that we did in step 1, and now we're learning to describe what's happening in the body. And here are the 2 reasons why this is really important. It brings you to a point of objectivity, right? You can be very objective about what's going on. You actually will learn by using this language, by talking about the tension or the flip-floppy stomach or whatever it is that's going on when you're feeling that tension, that it's really not that big a deal. Not really. It's just something that's happening. You're having a reaction in your body. And it's something that, perhaps you're feeling a little distracted. Perhaps you've got a little bit of a headache going on. But really, again, it's no big deal. However, so that's what you can look at logically and say, when you're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel that way often, does it? It feels like some mega huge emergency. It really feels very dramatic. It can feel very uncomfortable sitting there really saying no, but really wanting that drink. And, people use lots of language. The drink is speaking to me and really having to white knuckle it. It's really an uncomfortable situation. Let me explain why that's happening. That might help you to know. So it's all down to the brain. Now, the brain is a brilliant tool that we have, and the brain is what we're going to use to work through these emotions and transform, in fact, your relationship with alcohol. But largely speaking, in my work, there are two areas of the brain that we deal with. It's obviously far more complicated than two areas, but I find being simple helps. So there's the primitive part of the brain, which I like to call the lizard brain, because lizard for me makes me think prehistoric, scaly, really, 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 really old. And the primitive lizard brain is all about survival. And then we have the prefrontal cortex, or the human brain. I'll talk about both of these separately. So firstly, the lizard brain. That is driven, this is wired along 3 points. It's there to avoid pain, seek pleasure, and basically do as little as possible. And the reason for this is these were the 3 elements that we needed for our survival back in the day, back before we had on-demand TV and on-demand takeaway food and cars and trains and everything else. We were sitting in the caves, right? We were trying to avoid pain because pain meant death. Pain meant, fighting an animal and being eaten alive. It meant running towards pleasure by eating and sustaining ourselves. In fact, this is why we enjoy food, why we take pleasure from food, because food is essential for our survival. Also meant really kind of lazying and not overexerting ourselves, because we need to save all that energy for if we ever did come a time when we would have to run from a wild tiger maybe, or have some big outburst of energy through a fight, right? So we were all about survival. Our prefrontal cortex, our human brain, on the other hand, is the piece of the brain that's looking out for us. It really wants us to achieve our best life. This is the part of the brain that can sit and plan that you will join a gym and that tomorrow you're going to go out and you're going to go and do a gym session, or you're going to go for a run at 6 in the morning. The prefrontal brain is the one that can say, right, when I get home this evening, for a change, I'm not going to have a drink of wine, right? I'm just not going to do it. I don't want to do it. It's my decision. Done. The thing is that these 2 brains, they work differently. They have different strength in the moment, and they talk to us differently. So the lizard brain is all about drama, about attention, about taking action in the moment. So that's why it will take over in the present moment. So when you are in that bar faced with the note, that's the brain that you will be hearing with all the drama. Yeah, you've got a drink. This is great. This is the reward you want. It's going to expect it. It's going to expect and demand that reward. And because it's going to feel so good. It tells you it's going to feel so good. And not only is it going to feel so good, it's going to stop making you feel so bad, right? Because you're feeling a bit deprived, saying no. So it fixes all of that. Whereas the human brain, if we're able to look at this objectively, as I said, if we're able to observe ourselves, if we're able to describe what's going on in the body, be very, very neutral, that's when the human brain is taking over. And the human brain is saying, yeah, it's not that big a deal, right? You know that, right? It sort of strips away all that dramatic language. And we see the craving for what it is, which is an uncomfortable feeling, but only an uncomfortable feeling, right? Which leads to the second reason why this is important, is it just really takes our attention away, right? It takes our attention away from that lizard brain and brings us back to what we have said to ourselves about what we want to do and how we get to observe what is going on. This is how we access our human brain, by going to neutral, by really looking at this and saying that that's what we want to do. I have a printer going on here, but please ignore that. Step 3 is I want you to name the emotion. Whoops, so we have going on. I want you to name the emotion that you're feeling at that time, because emotions are what fuel our actions. When we're scared, we're much more likely to not take any action. So for instance, I'm scared of flying. I don't want to fly. So if I think I'm going to fly, I'll be scared. But if I am feeling courageous, then I'm willing to give it a go, right? I'm willing to give it a go. Doesn't really matter what's going on. So by naming the emotion again, we have a bit more objectivity. This seems easy, but it can be really hard. So I don't want you to avoid this, because you get so used to pushing away negative emotions and drinking over them. For instance, boredom. We overdrink, so we think I'm bored. It used to be a big one for me that I would always drink when I was bored. Another way that we create distance is by doing this, by naming this emotion for what it is. It's just an emotion. We go from saying things like, oh my God, I'm feeling so anxious, to, so I've got a bit of tension going on in my shoulders, and that's because I'm feeling anxious. There's some tightness going on there, and it helps us to feel more in charge. And hopefully my lovely printer is going to be finishing too. Oh, the perils of live broadcasting. So when you realize all this, right, when you're able to be objective and take these notes and describe these feelings and describe what's going on in the body, you realize you can create an emotion and that you're not at the reaction to it. So there we've created a summary, a foundation. We've noticing what's going on. We're just becoming observers. We're describing what's going on in our bodies, and that we're naming the emotion. So this really acts as, I would say, the basis for the process. But now we get to the magic, right? So we've just really now been stepping outside of ourselves, observing what's going on, and now we're going to get to the magic of the work. The 4th step, high tech here, is I want you to find the sentence. So the S being the letter here in the mnemonic. And when I ask people, when we talk about naming the emotion and finding the sentence in the brain that's causing that emotion, people will often say they will say, well, it's my boss, right? I'm feeling so stressed because my boss, or I'm feeling anxious because I had a row with my husband, or I'm feeling stressed because my children are screaming, or whatever it is, something going on outside of them. And this will seem really real, really, really, really real. But what I want to offer is that really it isn't that way at all. It's what is happening to you. It's not what is happening to you that's causing the emotion. It's how you are interpreting and reacting to that situation. Now, let me give you an example of this. Let's say you're in a traffic jam, you're driving along in a traffic jam, or the cars are backed up. You could be in that situation and think it's just the worst thing possible, right? Get really frustrated, really angry, get so wound up. Why can't these people move? This is the last thing you want, last thing you need. No. Just really be a very terrible, terrible experience, wasting your time. Or somebody else in the same traffic jam could be saying, wow, actually, this is pretty cool. I get this time on my own. Now, I might not have chosen this, but this is now going to give me the time to spend doing my podcast, listen to that podcast. It's going to give me some thinking time, or I just get to be on my own. Maybe I'm surrounded by people all day. Same situation, same circumstance, but how you handle it is completely different. So how you think about a situation affects how you feel. And your job is to find these thoughts, because these are the thoughts that are creating the emotion, whatever the emotion might be, boredom, anxiety, and so on, that is creating the drive to drink. And by finding these thoughts that create those feelings, that create the feeling of being stressed, you're going to see the habit of drinking, and you're going to not want to do that to unwind. Okay, so now we get to step 5. Oops, a daisy. And here we go. We are going to high tech here with the A. We're going to alter that sentence, sorry. So this is the last piece here. You're going to choose something else to think instead. Now, this is going to take practice. This will take quite a lot of practice. You're used to thinking those same old thoughts. You're used to thinking, oh, I'm so bored, feeling bored and then drinking. So we're going to get into doing this in a different way. A couple of tips on doing this if you find this difficult. Firstly, just ask yourself, how can I look at what's happening and see it in a different way? Or something that used to help me a lot was how would somebody else in my shoes view this? So I would think of somebody I admired, and what would they say about it? Listen, this doesn't need to be anything special. It doesn't have to be some grandiose thing, right? It doesn't have to be some fancy language. This is not about la, la, la. Everything is perfect. It can be something as simple as I'm capable of this. I can handle being bored. Used to be one of my go-tos. I can handle this. It's fine. It might feel uncomfortable. I can handle this. Thinking in this way just gives you authority over your mind, over your thinking, your feelings, and over the habit, right? Because that's all what we're doing here is we're getting authority over the habit. The more you practice changing your thoughts, the more you're going to feel less of the emotion that is creating and sustaining the habit, right? So the more you practice changing your thoughts. So for me, about changing my thoughts that would make you feel bored, the less I would have that habit and the less desire I would have to drink. Because then you learn that you don't need drink to feel good. It's really at the end of the day, we drink to feel good. So we're going to learn that by changing our thoughts, we don't need to drink to feel good. And we're going to learn we don't need alcohol to deal with our feelings, because we can feel our feelings. They're just feelings. That's all it is. And I used to think, I can do this on my own. Thank you very much. I don't need any help from you, alcohol. So there we go. That's the 5 steps. ODESA, Odessa. I want you to be the observer. Observe what's going on. I want you to describe in your body what's happening. I want you to describe the emotion that you are feeling. And all of this is, you can do this at any time, but this is all around, I did this for me around a point of saying no. You can find the sentence that's causing those emotions, and then you alter the sentence. Do this enough. Get used to practicing this, and this will really revolutionize things for you. Now, if this has resonated with you, if you've liked listening to this, if you think this has been helpful and you'd like to learn more and dig more into this, then I urge you to book a call with me. We can get on the call, super simple, and we can talk this through. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what hasn't worked for you so far. We'll go through what you've tried and what hasn't worked, and then we'll see why that hasn't worked. And once we've done that, we do that so that the brain learns, because we want to not carry on repeating the same old stuff. And then what I'll do is I'm going to build out your plan. In fact, I'm going to give you the entire foundation of what you need to be successful at achieving your goal. And we're going to build that all out on the call. And guess what? It's going to be simple, because simple works. But like I said at the top of this live, it doesn't mean necessarily that it'll be easy, but it'll become more easy because I'll be there helping and supporting you. And if you think, yeah, this could be interesting, right? This is something I've been thinking about. Had this nagging doubt about this. I really don't like what alcohol does to me. I don't like how I feel. I don't like how I act. I don't know how I behave. I don't like the consequences of it. But I really don't know how to start because I've tried so often and it hasn't worked. Tell me. I know you deserve more. And here's the cool thing. You can start that change within the hour when we talk. Now, if you're thinking, yeah, sounds good. Yeah, might do that, want to do that. But we've got Easter coming up, and then we've got that wedding, and then we've got summer, and I love cocktails on the beach. Listen, doing this, starting this, I can help you have a change within the hour. This starts immediately. Now, the reason most people, if they don't take me up on the offer of talking, is because they think it's going to be some big deal. It's going to take hours and hours. It's going to be very difficult and a lot of work. And I get it. I wouldn't want to sign up for that. But imagine that you can get those results in an hour. Start to get the results. How excited would you be? Very. That's what I was. And I know the same can be true for you. So go ahead. Let's not wait. Message me. You can message me on Facebook. or you can send me an email, anna@90dayslater.co, and we can talk and get that transformation started. You've got this. I know you have. And I will be back live, hopefully next week, on a new topic to help you as you start your transformation and stop over drinking. See you.